Graham's campaign has defied conventional wisdom this World Cup. So has Australia's innings today against England. When the ball was doing a bit in the morning at Lords, they didn't lose a wicket for 23 overs. They then lost 7 in the next 24. Would they take 285 for 7? It's a pretty good question to ask Michael Hussey, Murli Karthik and Graham Swan, who's with Mel Farrell. But after Aaron Finch's second 100 of the tournament, his second consecutive 100 against Australia in World Cups, and a steady partnership yet again with David Warner, they find themselves at 285. It's a familiar story from what we've seen from Australia. They start well, and they don't quite have the push or the punch at the end. Should make for a gripping halftime chat on ESPNcricinfo Matchday UK 2019. Hassan Karthik are here. We'll hear from Swanee and Mel in a bit. Now then, are you taking that, 285, if you were in the Australian camp?
Well, the Australians, the short answer is they have to take it. That's what the score they've got. Would they be happy? I think they'll be slightly disappointed from the point where they were. But from me watching the game, I feel as though it's a par score, and they should be happy with that score, because I feel the opening batters did a great job.
Oh, yeah.
It did not look easy out there at all. The ball was certainly moving around a lot. I think they had a bit of luck along the way, could have easily lost a couple of wickets, but they were good enough and lucky enough to get through and build a wonderful partnership. But from a position of about, 1 for 170, to then finish up with only 285, they'll be disappointed. But I think it's not going to be easy coming in as a new batsman on that pitch, especially if the ball's just moving around a little bit. So I think it's a good score, and I think Australia will be happy they've got those runs on the board. If they can bowl well and those clouds stay above Lords, it'll be tough to chase. If the sun comes out, it'll be a little bit easier.
Yeah, I think Graham Swan's trying to blow the clouds away right now as we speak. We'll go to him in a bit. Before that, just have a look at how good Australia's openers have been, and they've done it game after game after game. You might have some questions of the rest of the Aussie lineup, but up top they've been wicketless in just about every game with the exception of the West Indies. This is whenever they've batted first that they've always been wicketless at the top, so they tend to weather the storm. It's funny though, Karthik, when the ball seems to be doing the most, they haven't lost a wicket, and then they just completely lose their way in the middle.
Yeah, today could have been they could have been 50 for 5, to be very honest. It was just plain luck that Australia or David Warner and Finch didn't either nick one or get one onto their pads, because it was doing things.
And the ones they were nicking were flying over the slip.
Yeah, it missed them on the inside, it missed them on the outside, it flew over the stumps, but thankfully for them, they were just there and they just hung in. That was the most important thing. But yeah, it's a bit surprising that when we spoke about this in the pre-match show, you guys were mentioning the same thing. They look good, and Huss mentioned about the others. It's not about the guns, but the others who are there and what can they do. And I feel that is where Australia would be pretty disappointed with the fact that after that kind of a start, when it actually became easier for the others, or possibly better for the others, they couldn't encash on that kind of a start.
Yes, Huss.
Well, one thing that impressed me about Finch and Warner was that they remained positive. Even though the ball was moving around a bit, they were playing and missing, there was close calls all the way through, they still, as soon as there was anything loose, they were still willing to go for their shots. You know, if there was a short one there, Warner putting it away, or if they overpitched, Finch would hit one through the covers or down the ground, and that's really important. Your mindset is very important in conditions like this. If you're just looking to hang in there and survive, unfortunately you're going to get a ball that's got your name on it and you're going to be back in the pavilion. But they remain positive and looking to play their shots, which was very important.
We'll have a quick look at their control percentage, if you believe in such things, that there is a way to quantify how much in control they were, and that's exactly at 58%. So there was a lot that was flying off the edge, like Karthik says, chances, half chances for the England fielders. Before I go to Lords, the best batsman in the world is Steve Smith, and you want to push him to 4 after you've had a good start. Am I making too much of it, or is that something that they need to look at again?
I don't know. I think they'll continue to look at it. I think what they've got going at the moment is if the left-handed Warner gets out, then Khawaja goes in.
Is that true? Is that overdone a bit?
Yeah, I think it is.
Yeah.
You want to get your best players in as early as possible, and Smith is probably arguably the best player in that Australian team. So you do want to get him as many balls as possible. But I think that's the strategy they're going with. They want to keep a left-hand, right-hand combination.
Anyways, bowling to him is like bowling to a revolving door.
To
so to Smith. So you might as well go in at 3. Can be left and right both.
Very well, of course. And it was Moeen Ali that got the wicket of the left-hander, that got another left-hander, and then it just went England's way. So again, it has to be Moeen Ali, who should be given player of the tournament according to Graham Swan. But let's go to him and Mel Farrell now. Mel, you can give us, extract every bit from Swanee as you'd like now. All yours.
I reckon I'm extracting a bit of sweat from Swanee.
It's
He's
hot.
feeling the heat. It's muggy.
It may look overcast here, but it is muggy. It is close. This is England.
Well, it is close in more ways than one, do you think, after that first innings?
Well, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I agree with Mike Hussey again. Australia will be fairly happy with the score. I think it is about a pass score on that pitch, but they should have so many more. I mean, from 180 for one or 170 for one to only get to 285. I mean, England will be very, very happy with how it's ended up. Aaron Finch, he must get out of bed on days when they're playing England and just do a cartwheel, stand in the mirror going, gonna get 100 today, mate. He is awesome against England. Warner and Finch at the top were brilliant. I just don't think Australia got it right from then on. There's a pedestrian nature about their middle overs batting that's very much sort of a decade old. It reminds me of how we, as an England team, used to play. Used to think, well, just nerdle the spinners, don't look for boundaries. All of a sudden, you get to the last 10, and if you do lose a couple of wickets, you're up against it. And Steve Smith, I know you keep saying he's the best player in the world. You want him to face a lot of balls. He's the wrong man to have in the last 10 overs. He's not got the power game to clear boundaries. We saw a run out because people are just desperately trying to get things going. So it actually worked in England's favour that Smith was there at that point. Overall, though, England bowled slightly too short early on, and Australia did ride their luck, but you need that in moving conditions. I thought they did brilliantly at the top, even though it pains me to say it. But England bowled slightly too short. Wokes was the pick of the bowlers, could have had 3 or 4 on another day. But overall, I think it is about a pass score, so both teams will be fairly happy.
I mean, you mentioned the way it seems old-fashioned. Australia have done a lot of talking in recent years about that whole last 10 overs, wickets in hand, being able to go big in the last 10 overs. But what do you make of that whole sticking to this right-hand, left-hand combination and sending Smith in for that reason?
It makes you predictable, it makes you easy to play against, in my opinion. I think your best players get in there and face as many balls as they possibly can. Might be sort of a modern way of thinking, but left-hand, right-hand combinations, they don't matter that much in one-day cricket, I don't think. In Test match cricket, they can be great because you can mess up a bowler's rhythm and he's just trying to bowl dot balls and get a player out. If you've got left and right-handers in one days, it doesn't really matter because you've got boundary riders. So I don't see the point of it, or sticking so vehemently to it. I just think they've missed a trick a bit. Just this wickets in hand in the last 10, again, out of date. Teams who score heavily in the middle period put so much pressure on the bowling unit, don't leave it to chance that the odd wicket at the death really screws you up. Australia are 40 short than what they should have been here.
They do still have runs on the board now,
Yep.
and pressure now on England to actually get there. What did you make of this pitch? What do you see in it, and how do you think England will cope with what Australia's got to offer?
It's a very good pitch. It did do a bit early on. I don't think it will do as much now. It probably will swing a bit for Stark. You just keep wickets in hand for the first 3 or 4 overs, have a look. And Hustler's right about the mindset of the Aussie openers. They did ride their luck, but as soon as they had the slight chance to attack, that's exactly what they did. So the bowlers could never attack the stumps as much as they wanted to. Australia, Mitchell Stark, will bowl full. So you just got to be wary of the ball coming back in, but you will get scoring opportunities. Pat Cummins won't. He's not a very full bowler. He'll bowl a heavy length. I think there's scoring opportunities there. England are very, very strong when they don't lose wickets early on. If England are in the same position that Australia were, they will cruise this game. If they lose a couple early on, then it's a very tight game.
So then pressure really and focus on James Vince.
Massively. Huge pressure on Vince, which he won't want that. But more pressure on Johnny Bairstow, who's the senior opener now. He's the man who's got to shepherd Vince through it. I'll tell you, the man for the day is Joe Root on that pitch. So if Australia get Root early, they're in for a huge shout in this game. If they don't, Root will, honestly, he'll enjoy batting on that pitch like no other man.
Yeah, I'm always so frightened that I'm going to see James Vince just make a really beautiful 36
Don't be
and
frightened.
then look off.
If he gets a beautiful 36, if it's in 20 balls, job done. Just don't get a beautiful 36 in 60 balls, James.
So there you go. Focus on James Vince there. Perhaps Johnny Bairstow. What can England do up top? Looks like a pretty exciting game, and that's what we love about the one-day
This will
format.
be the game of the tournament. You mark my words.
There you go.
Sure.
And Swanee to do a lot of singing and no talking at the end.
You know, when the two of you were going on, I saw a cement truck just pass by. I wonder if Swanee's ordered that to just lay it on that pitch for the second half. But get some cover, Graham Swan and Mel Farrell. We'll come back to you very shortly. All right, let's pick up the conversation from what Swanee and Mel said. And this conversation on Australia's batting order through the middle, and I think we can extend it to from what we've seen in the course of the World Cup. Have they just got the wrong personnel, or do they just lack the flexibility? Other than Maxwell, there's no one else that you can actually go and play the power game from, say, ball one that you'd ideally want to have.
It's a good question, and it's a tough one to answer. I think the personnel is okay. They're the best players we've got in Australia that they can play. But I think it's the philosophy. Picking up on one of Swanee's point, and I think it's a very valid point. about keeping wickets in hand and just trying to work it around in those middle overs is outdated. Keep wickets in hand for those last 10. He's right. That is outdated. And the reason why it's outdated is think about the field restrictions.
Yes.
You're only allowed 4 men out between the 11 over mark and the 40 over mark.
Yes.
After 40, you can put the extra man out. So in that period between 11 and 40, there is an opportunity to go harder because there's less men outside the 30-metre circle.
You look at that 30th over mark, they've lost just the 1 wicket. Ideally, what you're looking between 31 and 40 then would be going at 7 and over, maybe 8 and over. That's what I think you'd ideally want because the risk is minimal, like you said, or rather lesser.
And there's more chances to hit boundaries because the opposition has to have an extra fielder inside the circle.
You are saying that you don't mind the personnel, but if I look at the other teams that are doing well, Karthik, in this, they seem to have reserves for this sort of position. If India have gone to this World Cup with a Dinesh Karthik or Vijay Shankar initially, New Zealand have middle order resources too. Australia could have picked Peter Handscomb or Ashton Turner. They decided to go sort of top heavy. In some ways, are you seeing this as a vulnerability now, that they don't have guys who can hit from the middle?
Look, I would assume, I actually have to differ with Swanee when it comes to Steve Smith and his hitting ability, because I've played with Smudger, and when it comes to changing gears, he's really good because he hits those funny angles. It's not about hitting sixes, but he hits those funny angles, just like a Tilakaratne Dilshan would. You would set a field and he hits somewhere else.
But doesn't he do that after he's played about 80, 90 balls? Or
yeah, that's why he needs to be at number 3. And again, you have to give him some sort of time. Spoken to him, he had no strength in that arm, and he's developing strength to hit those balls. And somebody like a Maxwell, you have got someone like Maxwell who's got enough hitting ability at any time. It's just a question of using the right shot selection at whatever point of time. So I don't feel Australia don't have the personnel. You're always talking about a Stoinis as somebody who can deliver, but it's not as if they don't have the personnel. It's about doing the right job. And I don't think Usman Khwaja possibly might fall into that rung where you feel that he cannot go and start hitting the ball from the word go. But I definitely feel that people like Maxwell and Stoinis are there to do that kind of a job there.
I mean, you look at Steve Smith in that game against the West Indies, he's sort of going hard, he's just looking hot, and he got out at that time, but that's after he's played about 15, 20 overs in the middle. There's a time in the 45th over in this game that I saw Smith facing 30 balls, and he just seemed too busy for his own good, and that just seems like something. Steve Smith batting 60 or 70 at that time, and I think that could be a different thing. Am I wrong in that, or do you see some merit?
No, I think that's fair. That's a fair comment. But we also need to put the pitch into perspective here as well. I felt as though, even through the middle period, the ball was still doing enough. So it's not actually that easy just to come in and play a few balls and then really get on with it and play the big shots. It didn't look like a pitch that you could just stand there and smash it out of the park because there was enough movement there. But I think philosophically speaking, in one-day cricket in general, yes, I think you can got to get your best players in as early as possible. There's scope to go a bit harder through those middle overs and then have your power players backed in the end once the field spreads out, like your Maxwell, your Stoinis or whatever. Unfortunately, they came in and they couldn't really get going today.
It's a bit like South Africa, where if they can't seem to get it from these guys, what you have in reserve isn't really the answer to that problem. You have Sean Marsh, who again is someone who wants to bat top 4.
That's true.
And now does it look like, what if you had an Ashton Turner in the squad? What if you had maybe Hanscom or someone? What if you had Mike Hussey in the squad?
Hanscom takes time as well. Hanscom is not someone.
Well, let me put Ashton Turner then as a more specific example of someone who is almost made for the game of, you get in around 33, 34 overs like Hardik Pandya or like Kedar Jadhav. That sort of role.
I think you'll see that in the future. One of the great strengths about Australian cricket over many years is you've got to earn your place in that Australian team. You've got to perform over a period of time, and once you get in there, then you show that backing in that player. Ashton Turner's had a little taste. He's played an excellent innings against India, and so I think looking down the future, Ashton Turner will have a big role to play in that Australian team, one-day team moving forward.
All right. Well, this is where we also would welcome our Hotstar top comment, and that's on Hotstar Watch and Play. And let's have a look. Now, while there was some help for the bowlers, says Sadev from Agra, that he thinks England made a mistake by fielding first. It was evident in the Pakistan-South Africa game that chasing a big total is not easy at Lord's. Do you concur with that, Karthik? Does this look a good decision at half-time at least, when you conceded 285?
Look, I think they would be happy with that target, not entirely happy, but something to bowl with, because it is definitely doing a bit. Even in the last game, when South Africa started bowling, they had something in that pitch. The Pakistanis bowled better than the South Africans when it came to bowling, so they defended the total. And even over here, you would expect that the top 3, I think Behrendorff has been picked entirely for that reason, that he hits those lengths and possibly uses the slope of Lords ahead of Nathan Coulter-Nile, who's been up and down when it came to bowling. And again, you would want the strike force of Pat Cummins and Mitchell Starc. I definitely feel there is something. It's not easy to bat on that surface.
Okay. That's
at least watching from here.
Yeah, that's a conversation we are going to pick up and go more into detail of. What are the challenges that England's batting will face in this chase? We'll have that chat on the other side of the break.
Cricketer loves a World Cup final more than Adam Gilchrist. The Australian made the final of all 3 World Cups he played in, 1999, 2003 and 2007, and won each of them. He also scored 50 plus in all 3 finals. His 104 ball 149 remains the highest score in a World Cup final. It's time to have some fun.
.286 very important runs for England's World Cup campaign. If they don't manage to get over the line here, there's then going to be some serious conversation as India are going to face up against them on Sunday, and then they'll have a final encounter against New Zealand. With everything that's going on in the rest of the World Cup, you think this is now a massive game for Owen Morgan's side. And does history really back him when it comes to these sort of chases? At Lords, let's have a look. First up, the highest successful chase at Lords in ODIs in the last decade or so, or nearly a decade, has been 252. So that's all that teams have managed to chase successfully. Other than that, it's 240, 220. It's like a throwback to the 90s, sometimes in the 80s. And on the other side, Australia in Cricket World Cups, while defending targets in excess of 275, have never lost. Now, I don't know whether in international teams there are guys that are digging this up and telling the rest of the team, or whether it makes any difference on earth or not. I'm sure an IPL team they do it, or a 2020 team guys, they've never chased 220, they never chased 180. Does this happen at all in an international team?
I wouldn't have thought so.
Yeah.
I think they're great stats to see, honestly. And as an Australian, it makes me smile a little bit bigger. But I feel as though the modern game is different. Like, a lot of those stats have come from years gone by. When a pass score was 200, back in the early days, and then suddenly when I was playing, 250 was a good score, and then probably when I finished 275 was a really good winning score. But I feel as though that has gone further now. I feel as though probably 300 is now a winning score, maybe even more than 300.
That's 275 plus. So there are games where Australia have got 350 and 380. That'll all fall into that bracket.
But the first stat was also interesting because that stat is post 2016.
Post 2010.
2010.
Lords one.
Yeah,
the
2010. Post 2010. But there are incidents from 2015,
2010.
13,
So 2015,
17,
what? 275, that was Pakistan?
252 is the highest score.
252.
So it's never come close to 270, 280. Which is again something that you have to put into your calculations. But like we've established, each surface at times is different. This is 2016 in England. 252 was the highest successful chase here. And this is a team that's...
if you go to 2017, it's 154.
Right, that's it. Okay, so let's get final comments. Is this going to be easier to bat on than the first half? But does that still make it easy at all?
I think it might be slightly easier to bat on to start with for England. However, it's not going to be an easy run chase for them. I think Swanee is exactly right. If England don't lose wickets early, and in particular that man Joe Root, then I think they've got more firepower through the middle to possibly chase it down. But I think Australia will be quietly confident because I think there's enough there in that pitch.
Formidable bowling lineup as well. Behrendorff had something new. There's Nathan Lyon. Do you expect Nathan Lyon to have an impact?
Absolutely. I want to see him. I'm waiting with bated breath the way he comes on to bowl. Because, look, you want those wicket-taking bowlers. You want those kind of bowlers to play one-day cricket. And Australia have had him for quite a while. And it's just a bit surprising that it's taken such a long time for him to be unleashed against any opposition. I just hope that he has a great day and has an impactful day in possibly winning the game for Australia.
Yeah, he's only been, I think, warming up for the Ashes this much, but this is what he's got in the warm-up match against England. He picked up a wicket, but that's a completely different ball game. There's so much more on the line now. Gentlemen, England or Australia? That's all I want to know. Gut feel. Gut feel.
Australia, come on.
Karthik.
Australia.
Okay, we do have both Murli Karthik and Mike Hussey back Australia to defend this, which would send a few shockwaves into the rest of the World Cup, given England's remaining fixtures and how they're placed precariously on this points table. If they do get to the chase, it should make for a great talk just the same. Do join us then on ESPNcricinfo Matchday UK 2019. Quick reminder that 286 is what England need to get the points on the board.